Start us off, Carter.
Hail and well met, traveler. I have a quest to give you. Please get
Keep
my
going. I need
prescription.
a second.
Please get my prescriptions. I have horrible, horrible insomnia. I'm too old to make it to the store. And there's gremlins on the roads. Please get my prescriptions. I will give you 2 pennies for such a task. My poor bones will never make it. The vultures would have me by sunrise. Please, I'm very sleepy. Can't help. I have no more to give the player characters.
Oh my god.
Please,
Alright. Welcome to
please
Castpod.
chime in.
Hold the Calum.
This is what happens when Calum isn't here. Who would have guessed he was the voice of reason?
We thought of this topic like 30 seconds ago. How long did it take for the bit to happen, Carter?
That was the most, spur of the moment improvisation I have ever done. That was literally
I love it.
5 seconds before you said ready to go. I'm like, oh, if he asked me to start us off, I will say hail and well met. The rest of that was completely off the cuff.
Oh my god. But now I'm over here.
Please, we need to get his prescription, his poor bones.
Just over here chuckling. Because we decided this topic because Callum said he's going to be late, so who cares what he's up to. It was just going to be us, and we spent like a solid, I don't know, hour trying to decide what to talk about. And just catching up.
Oh, yeah,
Most like every other session.
Session.
But I decided to let Carter start us off because me starting us off, it consists of me going start us off, other person that I'm with. And Carter committed to a bit.
Yep. Didn't even hesitate.
All right. So, in a mini sort of hype session or recording, whatever we'll call this, we are going to do a little bit of chit-chatting about some fun creative ideas we've had.
Oh, yes. Specifically in the D&D space, or the tabletop role-playing space.
That's right. So, as we've mentioned, I think once in the recent episodes-ish, and when I say recent episodes, I mean within the year of Dickety Dickety 3.
Kaiser took a lot of the other numbers.
That Kaiser. We talked about maybe starting a Castpod D&D session because one of our other campaigns is effectively dead.
Yes, as Disco.
Like, it's not... there was a couple of months where it was like, sorry, can't make it tonight. Sorry, can't do this tonight. And now no one even mentions it.
Right, and I thought about mentioning it, but the last couple weeks, I've been really bogged down in work. I'm like, I gotta get ready for D&D. How am I gonna... And then I'm like, oh, wait, I don't have to. Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah, our Avatar The Last Airbender themed session, well, it's been going on for like a couple years, actually. It's been going on for a surprisingly long time.
Wait, really? Years?
Give me 1 second. So,
when did we start?
I'm gonna find out. When that...
Hurry! I'm impatient.
The first thing of me sending a Google document that I pinned was April 2021.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was the first time I pinned from something. So that was probably the initial thing.
Wow, that's actually kind of wild.
Yeah, it's currently on a little bit of a hiatus, a somewhat planned hiatus.
Yes.
So it got to a point where, I pre-planned a lot, and we got through a good portion of it. So now I'm taking a couple of weeks to maybe a couple months to just re catch up on the lore, fill in spots that have been addressed, and just kind of adapt the lore to fit things more.
Right, right.
Which is it's a nice little break. That way we're not getting bogged down by like kind of a bogus session after bogus session,
Yeah.
and like we can really get back on track of
I will
things.
say I do appreciate there really haven't been any filler episodes. There's been like every episode is pretty substantial progress in terms of the plot.
Yeah,
And I was also going to say, you kind of got
we got to
your
a nice
campaign in.
starting point or stopping point
Oh yeah.
too.
I was also going to say you like did a really good job of like this was like the last moment you could cuz like they're working on so much new Avatar content now.
Yeah,
Like you kind of got it in at the perfect time before like they added a bunch of stuff to the canon that would like contradict you in any way.
yeah, and that's part of the reason I want it. Like I'm a fan of long campaigns and long term stuff.
Mhm.
And I can go into like a little bit of a DM divulge later in the episode of some like my thought processes of things and some secrets, not secrets, but anymore, but things
Right,
I had
right.
planned out incredibly long term for you guys and stuff. So,
Right.
but the reason I went into the past with it is to avoid any sort of like there's so much that happens in Legend of Korra alone
Mhm.
that it would make it just a significant amount more of work to just work it around. Where, as opposed to if I went into the past a little bit, the world is a lot more as it once was in The Last Airbender. And I don't have to worry about weird new mechanics. And if I make it too present or in the future, I have to worry about retconning things for canon's sake. For I think they're coming out with a new game maybe, but like the new show that they plan
Yeah.
to announce or release in like 2024 or 5. So this way it's like it's a nice little it's like a safety zone where it's like it's not so far in the past where no one's going to know jack shit of what's going on, but it's not in the future where I have to worry about a mix of playing it safe or retconning things.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for me, it's like again, the joke in the group is that I'm never actually going to finish watching Avatar. But
For the love of God, please.
for me, it wouldn't matter either way.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, did I mention I showed Christina that meme that Cal made? And while she was like, "Game recognized game," that's really funny. She was also like, "Damn, is that my reputation?"
What meme? Calum makes a lot of memes.
So basically, to bring everyone inside baseball a little bit, the joke was because one of our friends recently got engaged, and someone was like, "Well, who's next after this?" So someone made, or Callum made a list of like our general high schooly, collegey
Uh,
friend circles,
yes.
and it was like up next, single, sad, and mine was never finishing Avatar because me and my partner have been watching Avatar digitally together for a while, but we keep getting waylaid. And then she's like, "Well, I kind of want to see Owl House too." So now we've been watching Owl House more.
Owl House is a great different discussion. Yes,
Right.
the Calum relationship list. I loved it.
I meant to copy and paste it, but I forgot to.
I have it saved somewhere. I don't know.
Right.
No,
But
but it. I will say, somewhat in his defense, I keyword is somewhat. I have written before. There it is. Yeah, it's yeah, it's Kevin's married. Tom and Dan are engaged. Friends with upfront others significant others. Actually, one are set up next, and one has gotten engaged since.
Huh.
Um, Joe has a secret girlfriend.
Yes.
Carter is never finishing
My
Avatar.
conspiracy, yeah, my conspiracy is he had a secret girlfriend and then they secret broke up. That's my
That's
suspicion.
possibly true. But so with that Carter is never finishing Avatar is his relationship status. I will say in his defense a little bit, but also kind of attacking him on our wedding guide or like our invite list that we made. Um, I did write Calum forever alone.
Ouch. What if Callum has a secret girlfriend and that's what he's dealing with?
He probably is. That's probably why he's not here. Anyway, back to D&D.
Right. Yes. So Kevin had the idea of talking about some of the characters we've made, pitching some of the character ideas we've had throughout our time tabletop RPGing.
Yeah, I got a couple. I've had a couple crazy characters myself, but some of the people I've played with have had phenomenal ideas or just silly ideas that just it gets a chuckle out of me every single time.
Right, right. Yeah, because you have definitely had more experience with me. My experience is I did two campaigns my senior year in college with my roommate Frankie, and then I was like sitting around, kind of waiting for another opportunity, and then it came up with you guys.
Yeah. So my start was after college, and like Logan used to play in college, and he reached out to me and Tom and a couple of other friends too from college if any of us would be interested in a D&D campaign, and we said yes, absolutely. So Tom and I were the only ones that joined, and this was in like 2020 still.
Mhm.
And we had a group that changed size a couple of times, dropped a couple of people, gained a couple of people, depending on the campaign. Because it's mostly been Logan who's in running the campaigns, with the exception of one like side off campaign run by another player, Alex, who's
Mhm.
who's up. He's arguably one of the most creative character makers that I know, in like a funny kind of way. And he goes, so like it's gone weekly, it's gone every other week or so, and it's just a fun like frequent game that we play that we all just get on and have a good time. It's not it's it's serious enough that like serious moments happen, but it's not so serious enough that like we're not like having fun with it. So
Right. It
we've
is. It
played
is a. It is. Oh, sorry.
yeah, I was say we've played with that group for like almost 3 years now. And then, as we recently in this episode discovered, that so after a while of like playing with that group, I was thinking, I was like, what would be like a fun idea just to do with like a couple other friends? Because I know Calum would have a good time doing it. He was just too busy at the time. Logan was like pitching it, and it was kind of like it was a little bit of like one of those like awkward asking times to join in the middle of a campaign, which don't make sense. And I'm like, we could get like a fun group and stuff. And I was like, what would be
Right. Right.
something? What's a good idea that would be fun? And I was watching Avatar: Last Airbender. And I'm like, that would be a fun D&D world. And that's kind of how it
Right.
started.
Right. That's for me. Like I think that's like because like I've been thinking about. They made a big point with the discussion about the new D&D movie. They're like, oh, it's not meta at all. It's just based off of like the lore in the books, and I'm just like, but the fun of D&D is it can be anything,
I'm
and the fact that it's a bunch of friends making a story together.
yeah.
And for me, there's so much interesting possibilities of like taking a world that already exists and making it D&D.
I'm a
Like,
little not upset, but like I don't like I don't like the fact that they're not going to acknowledge. Like I hope they just said that for the public and they're gonna make some like meta references and
right,
stuff because I feel like that would be fun. Like
I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that the Lego movie existed, I would basically be like, hey, so you know how at the end of the Lego movie revealed that it's all a kid playing?
Yeah,
Like, literally have the entire first act be played completely straight, and then reveal it's just a bunch of kids playing, and then things are allowed to get wackier. Like, I guess I like the idea of, like, the arc of a D&D game being, like, the DM's, like, whatever kid is the DM has, like, a very strict vision of, like, what the world is, and then he, like, opens up to let his player friends be more creative, and that results in, like, the final act being just, like, complete
yeah,
chaos and wackiness.
yeah. Like, because I mean, you've witnessed me run a campaign where it's just like I very much go by the rule of cool, and I just like if
Mhm.
there's like my style of DMing, because I want first and foremost the people to have fun,
Right,
and if I get hit with a cockamamie idea, typically revolving around Calum or Logan, um,
right.
I like if there is enough lore or logic for it to work and be successful, I'll allow it.
Right. And yeah, that's like, I guess I've thought about, because I've wanted to DM a campaign. Like, I have broad general ideas, both for traditional D&D and a tabletop game that I really like called Root, which is basically a story of, like, a woodland run by anthropomorphic critters who are like, basically in the middle of a civil war between cats and birds and a couple other groups.
Yeah.
Um, and my problem is I would just be too like I wouldn't follow the rules enough because as a DM I'm like, well, if you want to do something cool, I'm going to give you the thumbs up, or like I'll make up extra rules to like give you more flexibility. Like I would make way too much homebrew for it, I guess.
See, that's the thing with the Avatar campaign. Another thing about it is I worked on that campaign for about 3 months before we actually started playing it.
Really?
Because I worked on it for a crazy long time because it's all entirely like I found like a not finished homebrew site of it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I started it. Um, and I have worked on it ever since, just
I'm
on and
trying to
off
think.
updating it. And I wanted to have before I pitched it to you guys, I wanted to have it be mostly done. Not mostly done,
Mm,
but like a good portion of it figured out before I actually like it was before I actually got like added you guys to it. But before we started, I wanted to be able to go for a while. Let's
right.
see for the page I used the stat sheets for first, which wasn't the first thing I created, but that was created February 1st. So, well, like 3 months, a little over under 3 months ahead of time of actually starting it.
I was gonna say it shows because like we hit the ground running. Like we didn't. There wasn't too much. Like the rules were pretty clear from the get go.
Yeah, I wanted to be prepped for a possible, like a lot of situations.
Right. Because for me, one of the biggest moments I ever had in a D&D campaign is when we were fighting basically like kind of the final boss of just that arc, and he tried to use Cast Fear on me. I roll a 20 as a counter, and then my DM was like, "Oh, you unlock this power," and it was like a homebrew power, and I'm like, "Oh, that's so cool that I have
Mm,
this like little unique thing that no one else theoretically has in D&D." And D. And I'm like, "Man, that's the kind of stuff I want to do." Um, yeah, I was gonna say. Well, sorry, hold on. I was trying to think of if I've ever tried to actually make a thing. I tried to do something with an artificer once, where I tried to homebrew the concept of a Horcrux. Because
okay.
yeah, like I know Harry Potter cursed thing now, but like I like the idea that an artificer could like split their soul among different objects to basically give themselves emergency HP or like emergency life. I never quite cracked it, but I like the idea of like you could temporarily reduce your max hit points to put your soul in an object. And the
Mm-hmm.
idea is if you ever reach death's door or you die, you can break one of those objects to get health back for a short term. Like I never quite cracked it.
Yeah.
Like it was something I was just randomly working on in college. where I, just got distracted by other activities and never quite finished it. But it was an idea I thought would be cool for a D&D setting.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting idea. So I'm currently playing an artificer, a
Ooh.
Thrycreen artificer, so a bug person in the campaign.
Oh, shoot.
His name is Doctor Insect or Doctor I Insect, um, and he's an alchemist, so he can do a lot of chemical stuff.
Right.
It is also like a sci-fi campaign, so he's kind of like the techie. Like I mostly play support, and low level artificers are kind of like outside of like creating a couple of things here or there. They're not really super great. But now we just reached level 3 where I get like some more artificer spells and stuff,
Right, right.
and it's pretty. I based my entire character off the concept of my character is a yellow crazy ant. So any spell, any ability, anything that I have, and like my stats and stuff are all based around that. Like that one fact of I'm a yellow crazy ant. So uh, another funny thing is because I'm typically a worker, I'm always doing something. I'm always moving around, getting things. I've deemed myself not high ranking enough to like. I would be too busy to like drink alcohol, so I would always keep busy. And Thrycreen,
Right.
so the bug people have the ability of they don't technically like they need to do like meaningless things 8 hours a day, but they technically don't need to sleep.
Huh. That's
I was gonna do a bit. Have you ever seen Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beast?
Yes.
So you know how Dave molts and goes through like
Oh,
the different
yeah.
stages. I had the idea at first. I was gonna do that bit of going through different stages,
Oh, that's fun.
and it it was a fun, vague concept, but in execution, like deciding when to change and stuff, it just
Mhm.
became so like so much more work than it needed to be that it wasn't going to be fun to play.
Right. I,
Like,
I think that is one of the biggest things in terms of like campaigning that is really important. It is like be open to changing what you thought your character was. For me, the Avatar campaign is actually a really good example of that. Because when I originally conceived, well, one, I like the idea of doing a non-bend. So my
I
character,
was
if
like,
you guys,
describe your character first.
so my character's name is Fang, which is a nickname. I've not revealed what her actual name is in the campaign. She is a rogue, pointedly not a bender. So her whole thing is she is like a member of note in a gang in the Fire Nation, Sea Ravens. She is kind of an enforcer. She's the person in a like sort of mob setting who, like, if someone owes money, it's her job to
She
like go to
gets the
that guy's
money.
house. Yeah, she breaks thumbs until the person finally pays up. And my original idea was because Kevin made a homebrew class called, what is it? Is it called Spirit Breaker or Spirit Bender? The idea was if
Chi blocker.
Chi blocker, yes. So the idea was they are able to mess with people who are benders. Like they can block their attacks or like neutralize their abilities.
Yeah.
And that was my original idea of like, oh, that's why she's high ranking in this gang, because she has the ability to like neutralize a threat. But then Molly decided to do a chi blocker, and I'm like, well, shoot, I don't want to, like, that feels OP to have two of those. So that changed my direction of the character.
Mm-hmm.
And then I made the mistake of being like, I'm going to roll for stats. And I
Uh,
got some stank stats. Not the
you
worst. Like, I had good strength, I had decent constitution, but everything else was kind of
you
bad.
did terrible.
And when you combine that with like some bad rolls, I'm like, God, my character seems like they're trapped, like they're not good at this. And then I kind of thought about it, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to lean into that. I'm going to lean into the idea that they're kind of rough around the edges. They're not the best. And it kind of like I hadn't decided why Fang's nickname was Fang for the longest time. And then I decided to make it that she was in an underground fighting ring and she was losing a fight bad and decided to bite her opponent in retaliation. So the nickname Fang is kind of like a mocking term in the Fire Nation. And I think letting yourself be open to the idea of like, oh, what you perceive your character at one point is not what they're going to be when you actually start playing can be very beneficial for the sake of storytelling.
Oh yeah, and it's also being open to just outside opinions too. I found um, there's been times where I pitched like not really character ideas to people. It's like, oh, you should be this person. It's just like, what if this? Like, hear me out.
Right.
Um, I can get into a good story about like the whole what if this conversation later, but something like being open to the character changes helps having so much fun because you also get asked like you get asked questions or somebody goes like, what about this idea, or like what about like this kind of concept, like for example, I believe when we were having session zero. So session zero, for those of you playing along at home, is when everybody or most people get on and we discuss what characters what, how to build it. First off, for the current campaign I'm in, where I'm a Thrycreen, they just added in a bunch, like on I think it was D&D Beyond. We don't use it for like outside of just character knowledge and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, they just added a whole bunch of like space related classes and stuff and new things, including
Right. The
Thrycreen.
most recent, yeah, the most recent expansion was Spelljammer, which is
Yep.
all sci-fi centric.
And I like I was going into it. I wanted to play an artificer. That was a fact.
Mhm.
But I was originally going to go in as um, I was going to go a warforged, a robot person basically,
Right.
and he was going to have like what's her name, Honey from Big Hero 6, how she
Yes.
has like the
I
periodic
love Honey.
table on her purse and can combine
Yes.
elements. So that was going to be like the vague concept of mine. He was going to be that, as well as he was going to be half like steampunky, half high tech, and he was working on like repairing himself as he goes to
Right.
make himself all high tech. Unfortunately, that didn't pan out because Tom chose a Warforged first. That was his first the first pick, and I was like, I don't want to like have two Warforged. And I'm like looking at the new classes. I'm like, oh, I could be a medical droid, or not a medical droid, a Robo Goblin or whatever it's called. And then Alex, one of the creative guys, he went and became one. He named Medical Droid, and his whole bit is he's pro. So Tom's character, his Warforged, is an old mining robot. That's just like it's got the whole analog dial-up sound in his head. He's slow. He's
Oh,
bulky. He like he just knows like mine, destroy like basic things, and takes everything very literally. And then the uh, the cleric Robo Goblin or Mecha Goblin. I think it's some Mech Goblin or something like that. Um, he's got like he follows the rules of robotics, like cannot intentionally hurt people and stuff.
right. Yes, the Asimov rules.
So he goes and follows those, and it's typically a healer, and a lot of the time he just restrains people. He doesn't like actually kill them. He just puts them to sleep or knocks them out and stuff. Like he literally has a tranquilizer gun. And I was like,
Nice.
all right, that rules that one out. And then there's like plasmoids, so like plasma people, and I'm like, oh, that could be a fun one. I'll be a plasma person, and I'll just take the elements out of just like adapt my body to be the elements and stuff that I need. And then someone else wanted to become a plasma, and I'm like, God damn it! I was just losing. And then I saw the bug person, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a bug person now.
Right. It is a challenge to. It is a challenge of like both in the sense of min max, because like regardless of min maxing or narrative, you want to have a team. Like the other Dead campaign we
Oh
did,
my god.
my original, we were all elves. My original
Everyone was an
character,
elf except for one person. The last person who went decided, oh, that's a lot of elves. I'll be a half elf.
yes, and yes, I was a light. Was I a half elf or a light elf?
You were a light elf.
Yes, poor Alistair, or Alistair Edwin Guard of the Edwin Guard estate. His whole gimmick was I kind of based him around. Well, one, the term Edwin Guard was actually from a script I've had for forever that I just can't quite crack. That is basically Treasure Planet, but different. But anyway,
Treasure
so
Ocean.
Edwin, yes. Well, no, it's in space still. It takes aesthetic ideas from that, where it's like, oh, it's in space, but they're all pirate ships still.
Okay.
Um, but yes, Alistair Endwingard, I kind of based him off Prince Naveen. He's like a fancy rich playboy who gets cut off from his parents. So he's like playing as if he has all this money, but he has nothing. His family, he's a sorcerer. His family made a pact with Nyx, like sort of the embodiment of the night sky, to get magic to take over a mine. I didn't think about it, but at the time, it's also Elon Musk esque, where it's like, oh, they took over this mine, and that's why they're rich
It really
through
is.
illicit means. And I'm like, ah, oh, geez, I don't know if I want to invoke this, but all right, we're already committed. He ends up dying. He died very early in the campaign. Basically, our first boss fight, an opportunity came up to. Honestly, it was like, look, if I
Here,
die, this will raise the dramatic stakes.
here's the thing though, Carter. Let's even more because that campaign's probably just we're not going to touch it again. If
Right.
but let's wind it back a little bit more. I asked you if you wanted to make two characters, and we kill off the first one early on.
Right. I didn't know if
Before,
you wanted to tip your hand that much, but yeah,
yeah,
that
no,
was
I'm
a
down to peek the
discussion.
hand. Like about about that campaign, I'm down to peek the hand, but not too. I'm not gonna do. I'm not gonna reveal too much of the lore just because the Castpod D&D campaign is set in the same universe.
Right, right.
Uh,
Yes. So Kevin approached me and was like, "Hey, are you okay? Like, because you're one of the more experienced D&D players in this group. Are you okay making a character to sort of get killed off?" And I was like, "Oh, that's fun," because I had a couple because like I like the idea of Alistair, but I didn't know if I would want to commit. He's an idea I had for a while, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to commit to a full, theoretically continuous campaign with
with him.
him.
Hmm.
So that led me to creating Rosemary, who really is one of my favorite characters made.
Yeah.
Um,
So describe
so
Rosemary a little bit.
so Rosemary, as a part of like our quest to avoid another half elf, was a frog. She was a grung, which are the sentient frog characters in this universe. So the idea with her is she is a bard who uses puppetry. Um, and I kind of like talking about inspirations for D&D characters because like I feel like sometimes people shy away from being like, yeah, was inspired by this, or I was inspired by that. It's like it's okay to take things you like from pop culture and use them as a basis for your character. For me, as a big musical person, um, so I'm trying to think of how to describe this, but basically, so in Wicked, the famous Broadway show, the book that's based on heavily features a subplot where a bunch of dwarves um, do puppet shows that kind of predict the future, and I like this idea of clairvoyance through puppetry. So Rosemary's idea is she has a little puppet named Hester who can predict the future. So they would do puppet shows where they would read people's fortunes, and then they join the Heroes Guild and use that power for heroing.
Yeah. So before we go a little bit further into like Rosemary and Hester and that campaign, I should set the scene a little bit. So that campaign is very much based off of a lot of your standard hero animes, One Punch Man, My Hero Academia, both recommended, Carter. Um,
Mm, I'll get around to it, I swears.
so you have you have this world where there's obviously bad people and good people, and being a hero is like a job. And there is like a main hero guild that everyone knows, and then there's some like lesser ones, like smaller group ones. And the basis of the campaign is the party joined because this is created by our friend Dan, asking if him talking about it, us playing D&D with his brother, if he wanted, if I was starting something soon, uh, like they would be down to play. And I was like, all right, let me see what I got. Like I've got a couple ideas, and then this one came up like with a new season of My Hero Academia that I was watching, and I was like, all right, I got an idea. And I'm like, because I asked them if there's anything specific, and they said heroes, and it's like, all right, cool. This is consider this done.
Higglytown Heroes. We're all going to be little plastic guys.
Yep, that's the name of the Discord. Uh, but we so had the vague idea, check, and you get like you can join a hero guild, and you get to be like you get to go on missions, save people, run like different ranked missions from like just basic chores to currying stuff. And the party joined the Tomorrow Guild, which is kind of like it's like a lower mid to lower ranking like of the guilds. They get decent jobs, but they're not the big name guild. And they were running a couple missions from there. Nothing super lore dense with them. They've had a couple encounters with a couple of people from the Big Heroes Guild. But that's kind of like the basis of it, is trying to work their way up through the Tomorrow Guild, and then if they wanted to go like taking down the bad guys, I believe, which were named the Collective. I gotta refamiliarize myself with the lore of this game.
I believe they were called the Collective.
But bringing them back, like doing hero stuff, trying to take them down.
Yes.
And
well, it was also helpful that like Rosemary came in late because she could be like, I'm going to recruit you guys.
Factor. Yeah.
Yes. Like Hester looks into the future and sees that there's a bunch of heroes in need of affiliation.
Yeah. Yeah, the Collective is the underground evil people. Or one of the groups that were evil. And yeah, did some of that stuff, and one of their like low-ranking generals was the guy that killed Alistair like early on. Carter's original character, which led them up to going to the main capital city and meeting Rosemary.
Yes. Yeah, it was a fun challenge. It's a fun challenge because like for some reason, like I guess I could have had you voice Hester, but I was like, I'll just do both voices. So Rosemary kind of has my like bass voice of like, oh, hello there, slightly effeminized voice, whereas Hester had like a very character voice of like, hey there, I'm Hester, hello. And it was a challenge of like factoring in the idea of like you had two different characters at any given time. And like I made a character sheet for Hester, which for a lot of the like, on a D&D sheet, you have stuff like bonds, ideals, flaws, and I just wrote puppet. Puppet. Is a puppet? Puppet. Yeah. But also like finding a good balance where you're like, oh, he can contribute in certain situations, but he's not OP. Like it's unfair for me to just get two characters with two different attacks and stats. Finding a middle ground there was fun.
And
like,
yeah, continue.
Well, I was just gonna say, because for me, like the pull is less for combat and more. Well, one, the flavor of like I think it's fun to have a bard who's not the traditional music bard, but also like the narrative tension of like, oh, there's something wrong with this puppet, like something weird. Because I didn't like write out Hester's origin story. I wanted like I like giving opportunities for the DM to kind of like shape some of that stuff. I just said the big arcing thing I gave for Rosemary and Hester's relationship is all I said was Rosemary found Hester in a place she shouldn't have been and she shouldn't have taken him. And the idea was like if I rolled poorly on some of my like magic spells, like the cracks would start coming through, and people would start to realize, like, oh, this puppet is concerning.
Yeah. No, there's and what's funny is I also I have Hester's origin story.
Oh man, I knew you did, and I'm like, I've I've been trying to do I've been trying to do what is that, National Treasure, to steal it.
Yeah. So there's been and that's kind of not kind of what the next campaign is going to be based off of in that world. Um, so they're kind of going into like from the DM side of when people create characters for my campaigns is I like to have like if they don't have things specifically written out or like planned out, I like to fill in spots myself.
Right.
Like for Rosemary and Hester, because I like balancing characters out, but I'll get into that in a
Hmm.
second. But like for Rosemary and Hester, it's like I agree with Carter. It's unfair that he has two. Like it'd be unfair if he had two separate characters. However, they with Hester, it's like being a separate entity, and he Hester is such like a cool concept that I decided to like I added Hester into lore somewhere. I'll leave it at that. But having balanced characters because like things could happen that can trigger Hester to do things. Or in the Avatar campaign, Calum's character has a pet sea serpent. Things could happen with the sea serpent that Calum can't really like control as much, or like situations. Like for example, they were recently following, I believe, a tiger shark, half tiger, half shark, and sea serpents and tiger sharks are rivals. So Skippy, the underappreciated Calum sea serpent, would be getting into fights with, not fights, but like aggressive standoffs with them. So I like to fill in a lot of the lore spots myself. But also with like when it comes to balancing characters, I don't like it when like personally all my characters have either a small like a couple of small flaws or like big dramatic flaws. Like my first character was loosely based off of Tommy Oliver, the Power Ranger, and he was kind of like true neutral. He just did whatever, and he was terrible at like he was good at athletics and being like strong and running around, but he was terribly like terrible negotiator. Didn't really know how to do much like that. And then my next character was his name was Malachi. He was a monk, and he was his base concept. I'll talk about the character design, his character in a second with Carter, because I feel like Carter would appreciate it. But he was balanced in terms of like a little bit character wise because he was a reincarnated kind of situation.
Hmm.
So he was balanced in terms of while his intelligence and wisdom and dexterity were pretty high, his strength and constitution were trash. Like he had negative
Right.
strength. And his whole concept was he was this entity that took possession over bodies, and he was like the founder of this temple and an entire religion, and he would when he would die he would be his soul was too strong or something like to that nature to actually be laid to rest, so he would find a new vessel. And his current character was like a street urchin tiefling that was kind of like brushed aside and undernourished. So he was like a very scrawny like guy, incredibly smart and well spoken, but when it comes to like strength and constitution, trash. Couldn't do anything. And then my next character was Gore. He was a
Yes,
Goliath.
what I'm familiar with.
Goliath fighter, bigger than anything, based off of the Macho Man. And I would talk like that for hours at a time and
Jesus.
drink the entire time too. Gore was a very avid drinker. So like his Gore's strength and charisma were super high. incredibly charismatic character. However, when it came to intelligence or like making logical moves, uh, Gore was not the guy.
Right.
Funny running bit would be I never referred to any character as their name until the last session of that campaign.
Oh.
They all had nicknames. But like with so going back to like Carter and Hester and stuff, so it's like I like the balance aspect and I like to fill in possible lore and make things that seem like one-off things to be a lot bigger.
Right, right. Well, I was going to say one of my favorite things at overall in D&D, and it kind of ties into two things you said. One, the lore aspect of like, I don't know, as someone who does writing sort of professionally, like it can be kind of like it's kind of nice to have a space where you're actively encouraged to collaborate and like give up control for the sake of a broader narrative. Um, and also the discussion of like character flaws. For me, like I feel like I end up finding the episodes because when things go wrong, it lets you realize like interesting ways your character is flawed. My best example of that is kind of the main done, Toria. So her whole gimmick was she was a half warlock. Her uh, with Hexblade as her subclass. So the idea was she was like the runt of her clan, like she was the runt of the litter, and she was really not helpful whenever raiders would come and steal their stuff. But she read a lot and read about the idea of like there's some ancient lady in the mountains that if you find her, she'll give you magical abilities. So she goes up, gets a magic axe, gets magical like fire powers, and immediately gets kicked out of her because they're like, nope, nope, don't like that, get out of here. And
Go on, get.
one, yes, go on, get. We don't do magic here. And one, I gave up most of the explanation for what the hex blade was, which in my case was a magical axe. I kind of based it around Kratos' axe, where it's like, oh, it's just a big scary axe that you can throw around. And her powers, I kind of gave a lot of carte blanche, and just bits and pieces of the lore would be sprinkled in when I would do something particularly violent or scary. I would suddenly get more abilities or suddenly get more, get like a boost. And also the flaws of like, I kind of built a character. Like originally, I was like, oh, she doesn't want to do magic anymore. She wants these powers to go away. And finding a balance of like, and realizing like, no, I want to use those powers. And yes, they're bad, but they're good in a way. So leaning into the idea that she's slowly buying into like, wait a minute, no, why should I give these powers up? Why shouldn't I want more magical powers? And finding that dramatic tension was really satisfying to me. Um, and it was also a fun. So there's a cantrip called like produce fire that lets you like throw a fireball. But I started using it purely aesthetically. So the idea was when she like was swinging her axe around, she would like set her hands on fire to like psych people out. It's a fun way of taking rules that exist and playing around with them in like silly or like cool narrative ways.
Yeah. It also like when you guys throw out wildcard things to me, Logan especially because he knows the game better than I do. It's I always like that challenge of because at first when I was first like starting to GM the Avatar campaign, I was gonna be like very strict, like, oh, we're gonna do this, like it's got to go like this,
Mm-hmm.
and then like more ideas we pitch, and we would lose track of things, and I would get like I won't deny I would get like a little frustrated. I'm like, you're missing the main part of what you're supposed to be doing, but then I was just like, but then I would be very railroady and like going. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, we're going here, where it's like let's let's let them fly around a little bit because I've got just vague lore concepts all over the place, so I can and just ideas that don't have any set locations per se. That way, if things go off the rails, I can get them back on and just be like, all right, we're gonna just do this. Like, all right, I'll
Right,
reveal
right.
this at this point. like just so it's not like nothing seems wasteful. And that's another big thing of my campaigns. I very rarely introduce something that doesn't have like I mean there's times I'll introduce things that'll have like no meaning whatsoever and stuff, and that's quick one bits things. But the longer term stuff is like that I'll think of that seems kind of bogus actually has
Mhm.
more meaning.
Right, right. Yeah, I like that a lot. Um, I guess one of the things I was going to ask, which kind of is a part of our conversation, what are some characters you haven't done yet? Like, what character ideas do you have that you've been meaning to get out there in the open?
So I do a lot of my character idea thinking in the car first off. Um,
Mhm.
and it's typically when I'm alone in the car for a long period of time is when I just hash out characters. And I've got two that are currently like on the palette of
Right.
next campaign I'll think of this, next campaign I'll do this, or I'll make them like characters in the next campaign that I run as like semi-major characters or something. And one, I believe he's a goblin, and he's gonna be a very like Igor esque
Mhm.
goblin, where he's incredibly devoted to some form of deity, and he's like he's just like the idea was to do it in a campaign where I would be also playing with Calum or Tom and make my character believe that whatever their character is the like is the deity themselves.
Ooh.
And just be like, just kind of have him give him like the yes master voice,
Hmm.
like he would only do things and like actions, like it didn't matter how good it was, it didn't matter how bad it was, he would only do the actions that his master appointed him.
Huh.
So like
I like
outside, like he would have enough self preservation because he like to like not die. He would be like, can't die for master. So he would have
that.
enough of that kind of like preservation. However, he would be just like when it came to like say we were in a ballroom and
Mhm.
we had to like find like sneakily go around and do something. And if the person I thought was master is like, what should I do? And it's like, all right, go around and pickpocket everybody. And it could be like a bunch of just genuinely nice people. Like it could be the good guy awards. And he would be just like, yes, master, and go around and start to try and pickpocket people.
Oh, I do like that.
Or if they were just like, no, just go up with the band and play a song, and he'd be like, yes, master, and he would go up to the band and be like, does anyone know master's favorite song, Ode to the Master, or something like that. And then the other character idea, which this was also the descent into madness of Kevin. So I thought of him, and then the other one when I was driving to pick up Molly from Connecticut, which is a solid 3 hour plus drive for me. So doing that alone, I had a lot of time with myself, and the
Right.
descent into madness typically happens about a third of the way through, and it's a little bit based off of Hester actually, kind of. It's a small character it like I think I said like a halfling or a gnome. I think I went with halfling, but it was adopted and raised by a family of elves. So it always seems like its growth is stunted because it believes it's an elf. And it's the world's most depressing bard. And he would sing like all these like terribly sad songs. And it just let's see if I can get the voice. Like he would have like a little high pitched like voice, and
Right. Right.
like just sing like very slowly and melodramatically, if that's the right word to use in that sentence. And that's like he would just be using like kind of like a lot of heavy focus on like darker magic and stuff, and like, and he would always just be talking about how he was unloved and stuff.
Oh,
Like, uh, it's a sad world after all. That was a song that he
dear God.
he would sing. Or it's like somebody to love me, but in a really sad version, not like, oh, I need like a significant other. It's like, I just need somebody to love me. Could be anybody. That was another sad one, and just be like a real like, he would be a real depressing character. Just to
Oh,
like a mix between you feel bad about this person, but also you want them gone because it's just bringing down the whole vibe. And that
I
would be
like
like
that.
his whole bardic thing would be, it wouldn't be like, he wouldn't really be support in terms of helping the party. It would be support in terms of derailing the opposition.
Right. It's always a tricky line to do like bummer characters or like characters who are imperfect without like while still making it fun for everyone else.
Yeah, like the flaw in that character, besides just being a depressed, like a very big downer, is coming from such a negative household that, in terms of like a lot of his stats, like constitution, charisma, intelligence, because of just being in such terrible situations, they're all super, and like strength, they're all super low.
Right, right.
Um, kind of like he's gonna have like, I plan on making him stronger ish with strong spells, but
Hmm.
I want very low rolls for him. And
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even think about like what kind of roles you're going.
and like with character creation for like campaigns that I run personally, I'm cool if you want to do like the standard picks for ability scores, or if you want to roll for them,
Hmm.
or if you want to go lower for a character. Like with Gore, I rolled really high for like what his intelligence could be, and I was like, I don't like that. I'm gonna drop it down a lot.
Right,
Like,
right.
I don't mind lowering because it doesn't help you in any regard,
Hmm.
but hiring is a no go. And then the other one,
Yeah.
the other character would be loyal to a fault,
Hmm.
like willing to like die in the situation, any situation for it.
Right.
Um,
Uh,
so as we wind down the episode here, do you want a little bit of a sneak, little sneak preview slash trailer ish thing for the concept of the next campaign?
ooh, yeah, hit me with it.
I can tell you, not Calum, because Calum's not here. That nerd. All right, so it takes place in the universe of the now effectively dead campaign.
Hmm.
And in that campaign, the party met this adventurer named Dresdwin, and a couple of times, as in two, where he helped him out with a little bit of sailing, a little bit of helping him through a valley that giants would migrate through. And I posted it in the Discord. Actually, there is a want ad for him, where it says gold in really big letters, and then in very similar to the background font and very small underneath it says gold. It says gold not guaranteed.
Yeah.
Calling all adventurers, known explorer is looking for assistance on a new exciting expedition. In need of individuals with a sense of adventure, a need to escape, a need of a thesis, a want of untold fame. And then under that untold fame, it says once again, untold fame not guaranteed. But I wanted to do that just to kind of leave it open to any possible characters. It doesn't have to be anything specific.
Right.
And it says contact Resdwin at the Sizzling Salamander Tavern in Tie Town on the eve of the summer solstices for more information. So also just like most campaigns, everyone's going to start by in a bar, And another little tidbit is that the characters are going to be starting at level 5 this time, Carter. We're not
Yes,
starting
which
at
I
level 1.
love.
It's going to be starting a little higher. So here's the little bit of a vague concept that I don't believe I discussed with you guys.
Ooh.
So on a previous adventure, Resdwin, known adventurer, better of many women, was leading a party of heroes through the Pass of Giants. Does that sound familiar, Carter? That was
Oh,
a
I
session.
like that bit.
A couple months ago, yeah, a couple months ago, he ran into the party again on the seas, and he remember as he left them, he remembered his first encounter with the party, and like in a reminiscing way, and developed a small interest into why. So in that campaign, that's now dead, they were in the Pass of Giants, which is like a very large cavern, kind of Great Divide esque in Avatar, that he was leading them through. And they found this, like where they stopped for the night, they found this kind of side cavern, and they got a hint of some lore of the world. And he Resdwin never went into that cavern or into that cave,
Oh shit.
and he's now reminiscing. And if I remembered correctly, which I believe I did, nobody really divulged too much to him of what happened there in that cave. It was kept very hush hush. So he's looking for a an adventuring party to help him try and discover what is in that cave. And Resdwin helps the
Ooh.
party, hires the party to help him uncover that mystery.
Okay, that's actually really
So
interesting.
that's the vague concept, Carter.
Ooh. I have a couple different ideas for characters that I haven't said. I don't want to spoil on here yet, but that sets up some interesting
Yep.
ideas.
All right. And with that little teaser, hopefully we can grab a third person and start recording in the near future. Uh, Send us home, Carter.
Fair traveler, please. I need someone to pick up my inhaler from the store. It was being repaired. My lungs are very weak. I will give you one magical feather if you retrieve this for me.
I thought this is where you'd be plugging like Disney Desk or Twitch or something
Oh,
like that.
fuck. Yes. So, shit. Okay. So, look up the Disney Desk podcast. Me and my friend Sydney, who will be on, I believe, one more Castpod episode in the near future. We do all things animation Disney. We are doing we're doing an exclusive review of the Disney 100 exhibit, which is exclusive to Pennsylvania. Um, Follow me at the Rat King XIV on Twitch. I am going to be taking on the final secret boss of God of War Ragnarok very soon.
Oish.
Uh, and yeah, Carter everywhere, Carter 1,000 years, Carter 2025, Carter 2028. What's going to happen then? You don't know, but you tune in to find out.
All right, until 20 Carter 2028. Bye.
Bye.